So we're 3 hours, 32 minutes in here to Zach's 100-mile run, and we now are joined by Ian Sharman. How you doing today, Ian?
I'm good. Nice to speak to you again, Jamil.
Yeah, good. Been a while. Good to see you. How are you holding up with everything that's going on?
Not too bad overall. I already work from home anyway, so it's not as much of a change, but it is the new reality of things, seeing things like treadmill challenges on Zoom. That's stuff that I hadn't even heard of Zoom until like 2 months ago, to be honest. So now half the things I'm doing seem to be on that. I still use Skype a lot, but Zoom is the thing everyone's wanting now.
And are you in California? Where are you located?
In Bend, Oregon.
Oh, Bend, Oregon. Okay.
So I went between California and Oregon a few times, but This is where I first met my wife. So Oregon is the place I want to be. And frankly, at the moment, I'd rather be in a small town than a big city.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, Ian, before we get into it, maybe tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. I know you're a coach. You're a super accomplished athlete with many 100-mile wins and records. So a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I've been running hundreds for about 10 years, running ultras of all types for about 15. I did the last 10 years in a row at Western States, with 9 of them in the top 10, and just not quite managing that the last time. Won Leadville a few times. I've got the course record at Rocky Raccoon 100-mile, and I've got the Grand Slam of ultra running record. So I like my 100-milers. Zach and I have known each other for quite a while. I think we first met probably at the 2012 JFK 50-miler. So that was the 50th year of that race. Max King came along, broke the record. Zach and I think we shared a few miles at the beginning, but I was actually about his age at that point now, and he was in his 20s, much nearer the beginning of his career before we started focusing more on hundreds. But Zach also is one of the coaches in my business. So I coach at a business called Sharman Ultra, and I've got a whole bunch of other elite level professional runners who coach. And Zach just got off. We have something happening there. I see there's a quick rest break.
Yeah, look, but he's been kind of switching back and forth between the treadmills, maybe something with the screen, or I know they're even with a lot of sweat, sometimes it can get on there. So he's been kind of doing a switch every hour or so, it looks like.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you want to keep it fresh and gives him a little bit of a break there.
Yeah.
Zach and I have known each other a long time, and just seeing him do his amazing 100-milers in the last, 5 or 6 years, breaking the American record, then the world record last year. But I think the most impressive thing about that me as a 100-miler who's done flat to fast 100-milers, is the fact he did a negative split running the 100-mile world record. That just blows my mind, because the hardest thing when you're near the end of any race, never mind one that long, is not slowing down. And he was, I think, a couple of minutes quicker for his second 50 miles of that to get 11:19. So I have no doubt that he can keep an even pace very well through this kind of thing. And three and a half hours is just the warm up for him. Do we know exactly what pace he is going at the moment?
I think earlier he had like a 6:49 mile. I don't have his exact splits on my screen available, but I know we just had a question in the chat room on an update. I think he went through 28 miles in 3:20. Oh, here we go.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That's good to know, because he's not going to be going for his 100-mile best. He's not going for 11:19, but it sounds like he's not going too much slower than that.
Yeah, I think overall his goal is to break 12 hours. So currently the record is 12:32 by Dave Proctor for a treadmill world record. So that's his. Looks like he might have just hit 30 miles there.
I see. Okay. Yeah, so 30 miles and 3:36. So that's just around about just under about a 7-minute mile, basically.
Yeah.
So comfortably under 12 hours at this point if he keeps going at that pace, which I have no doubt he will. As we just mentioned, he dead even paced his world record. So unlike most people who might plan on having a little bit of allowance for slowing down, I would imagine Zach is just planning on keeping it completely even the whole way.
Yeah, we were talking to actually Jeffrey Burns a little bit about that earlier, saying it might even be beneficial to vary it slightly, just as you normally would in a race. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what Zach is doing. I think he talked about maybe varying it a little bit as he goes. So yeah, in his pre-race information, he says, as far as his pacing strategy, he says a good day will likely have me feeling fresh at 30 miles. So he just hit that. So hopefully he's feeling fresh. And I don't know if we can at some point get a soundbite from him, but I know if he's focused, he's probably going to want to be doing that. And then he'll probably be a bit worn out, but still focused at 60 to 70 miles. And I'm sure you're well familiar with that as well, just as you get through. So I'm curious for you, I know I've seen on social media, you've been incorporating some treadmill running lately and even doing some faster runs, like a fast half marathon, I believe.
I haven't done a half yet. I've done a
10K?
5K and 10K.
Okay.
And I would have done a mile, but the treadmill maximum speed is 5-minute mile pace. So that's great for slightly longer, but I'm luckily just a tiny bit quicker than, not much, but a tiny bit quicker than that. So I can't do a 1 mile on that. So I did that on a track.
What is
although
your
that's
1
not
mile
really
PR?
allowed now because tracks are closed, or where I am, they are anyway.
Oh, okay. What's your 1 mile PR?
So I did a 4:53, which beat my previous 4:54. So that was kind of nice to set a PR, and you know it's exactly right because it's from the mile starting point on the track and it's all perfectly measured. But yeah, I've never been a super fast guy. It's difficult to be that quick at the really short stuff and at the longer stuff, and my body definitely is more biased towards long, slow, steady things. But even with that, obviously there's benefits that the quicker you are at say 5K, that's going to flow through, all other things being equal. You see the top level ultra runners like a Jim Walmsley, who's a sub 14-minute 5K, or Max King, or some of the other guys who can run very fast on the track, and particularly did when they were a little bit younger. So that speed does help them then to maintain a higher pace and have a higher VO2 max and a better running economy, and just a lot of experience from that and a lot of high mileage, longer term adaptations. But I wish that I'd done that. I never personally did track running really. I did a little bit when I was about 12 of sprinting. I enjoyed that. I thought I was pretty good over about 30 yards. But then the other guys would be just a little bit quicker than me for top speed. So it's good for getting to a ball. That was the bit that I cared about. Like in soccer or other sports like that, it's that first 10, 20 yards that matters. And now that is the opposite end of the scale to ultra running. So
it's like we have a check-in from Zach.
Oh,
Zach,
good.
how you doing? I don't know if you can hear us.
How are you feeling?
Huh?
How are you feeling?
Good.
Are you feeling strong?
Yeah, I feel fine.
Okay, great.
Are you keeping a consistent pace, Zach, or are you varying it at much at all?
Am I on right now? Or? Oh,
Are you running a
I just.
consistent?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Sorry, I'm actually watching you guys, but I think I got a little bit of a delay, so I had to pause the live feed and come in. Feeling pretty good, legs feel fine. I think I underestimated fluid intake a little bit early on, so we dropped the temp a bit. I've been on top of a little more electrolytes, a little more water for the last hour and a half or two. And that seems to settle me down a little bit. Stomach's feeling a lot better now, so just stay steady here and we'll squeeze this thing in under 12 hours. We got a long ways to go. It'll be a fun day.
Awesome. Are you keeping a consistent pace on the treadmill? What are you running at right now? Oh, we might have lost the feed there.
Yeah,
well, that was
I'm not
cool.
sure he heard that one, but he looks like he's cruising because he can talk very easily. So we know that he's at a very sustainable pace. Even 30 plus miles in, he's not feeling too challenged there. So,
Yeah, did you catch
that's what you'd expect though.
Did you catch what he said there? He said he was having a little bit of an issue early on, but he's kind of figured something out there. Did you catch that?
I couldn't quite hear. I could just hear that I think he said something about eating as well, but
yeah, it might have been a
seems to be
nutrition
good
thing.
right now.
He said he was underestimating something. I don't know if that was the pace or possibly the temperature of the room or maybe his nutrition, but it sounds like he's got it much more dialed in now, which is great to see. So yeah, I mean, this part of 100, as you know, you're kind of hitting this 30 miles to maybe 70 miles where you're just kind of like, you're done with your warm up. You're not anywhere near the finish line. You're just kind of in this big no man's zone that you kind of got to get through and just kind of mentally zone out a little bit, maybe even.
Well, it's combining both zoning out and being aware. So you've got to just let the miles go by very easily, but you've also got to be aware of anything that changes even a little bit. Like maybe the last couple of miles have felt a bit harder, maybe your heart rate's a bit up, maybe particularly given he's indoors and is in Arizona, maybe the air conditioning's not cooling the room quite enough and that's allowing his body temperature to creep up. So he's got to be aware of those things while also really just being in a groove. These are the miles that often in a race are kind of nice because you've often got some other people around you, and that means you've got a bit of company, but it's not feeling too hard yet. But what you're trying to avoid this stage in the race or the run is basically nothing feeling hard. So if that means he has to slow down for a mile or two here and there, or open a window, I guess actually opening a window would probably heat things
Yeah.
up rather than cool it down. But whatever he'd need to do to keep it on track, and particularly things like eating, making sure he's getting enough calories to keep up that degree of effort at the easiest possible intensity.
Yeah, I know. I found for myself, like using a treadmill indoors, it can get surprisingly warm. And so I was doing the quarantine backyard ultra back in March, and I was on my treadmill for maybe 5 or 6 hours, and I had to turn my AC like way down. So it, like, if I was just sitting in the room, I would be freezing. I'd probably put a jacket on or a blanket, but it kept me cool, and it kept me feeling good. And I think he even maybe has a dehumidifier in the room, which I recently heard about people doing inside a treadmill. You can get a lot of that humidity built up as well, which
and presumably that humidity is from his own breathing, just making the room more humid.
yeah, exactly. Because yeah, Arizona is pretty dry overall, but I think if you're working that hard, you're probably producing a lot, and that's the last thing you want is like, I mean, sweat dripping off onto the belt of the treadmill or on the screen. So that's probably what is going on there as well. Now, how have you been coping with the quarantine, or maybe how some of your athletes? I'm kind of curious to see from your perspective. Are people using treadmills a lot more in this period of time?
A little bit more. I've got some people in countries where they had the complete lockdown, so they couldn't go outside their house at all. In South Africa and Spain in particular, but those restrictions have now been lessened. They're still more restrictive than we have in the US, but they really did struggle a little bit. One of them bought a treadmill during that part of the lockdown, and that made life a lot easier for him. The other one just had to walk around the house a lot more, and he even did some sprints on his driveway. But we basically just said, okay, for this month, and it was that long, we're going to assume you lose a little bit of running fitness, but we're not going to beat ourselves up about it. It's just going to happen. We'll do some good strength work. We'll be focused on getting back into things afterwards, but we focus more on the mental side than the physical side, because a month of less training doesn't have a massive effect on losing fitness. But if you go insane and every day you're feeling cooped up, and this is what everyone's feeling, even if you are allowed outside, then that's more the side that I've been focusing on with a lot of the people I'm coaching. Luckily for myself, I haven't found it too much of an issue because I am allowed outside. I have trails right out of my door. I have a much smaller number of people that I'm likely to bump into on a run. But even I'm making sure I do the times of day that are less busy, the places that are less busy, and I'll often do things around dusk so that just as it's getting dark, I know I'll meet almost no one out on the run, and it just makes it that much more relaxing. So there's a lot of different ways that you can try and do that. But if you're finding that the running at the moment is stressful because you're just worried about being outside, or you're finding that other people maybe not behaving as well as you'd like them to is making it more stressful, then you've got to find ways to be able to just compartmentalize and say, these are the things I control, and these are the things they're going to do that I can't control. And therefore either not being around people when it's busier, or being able to say, okay, well, they're going to do what they're going to do, but I can wear a mask, or I can cross the street to avoid them, or whatever it may be, so that you're not getting annoyed and worn down and stressed out by things totally out of your control. And that's been one of the biggest themes, I'd say, that I've been talking to people about in recent weeks. And then the other big one is the obvious frustration of races being cancelled. For most runners, we need that target, and usually that involves races. So Zach here, he had a race target of running a 100-miler in the UK. Instead, he's doing it on a treadmill. So he found a new target that gave him a reason to train, gave him a reason to stay motivated and love his running and have something big to aim towards. Because we don't know necessarily exactly what races physically will be possible in the coming months. A lot of people have been aiming for things like virtual races, like the series that Viper does all the time, and that you've got ongoing, I'm guessing, planned for the coming months, more and more of those kind of situations, but also things outside of racing, just so that it's possible to still do something no matter what gets cancelled. So the kind of examples of that are, I am going to be running around some of the mountains in the Pacific Northwest because the trails are open at the moment. And I know I'll be able to do that. So I can do 40-mile epic, beautiful runs. And it gives me a reason to train. It gives me a payoff for putting all that work in.
Yeah, I want to
think
talk
that's
a little
one of
bit.
the key things. People need to find something that's meaningful for themselves.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but we got a check-in, looks like, from Christina here.
We got the QR code up again for Fight for Freedom. We are striving to try to get that $10,000 match donation going to that foundation today. So take a screenshot of that and get your donations into that link. You know, that's part of the reason that we are here today. Congrats to the rest of our winners for this hour. Ultra is giving away another $100 online voucher. So just reach us on social media to get that. We've got another SFuels prize pack too. It's going to have some different of the products in it for you. Reach out to us on social media and we'll get that. Nordic Track, I did find out, will actually be drawing around 90 miles today for that winner. So make sure you get into their Instagram and get set up to enter in for that. It's a great product to have and pretty easy to do. Just put your name in the hat. Then they'll be announced around 90 miles today. So whatever time frame that's gonna be. Just shout out again to all the runners and cyclists out there getting after it today, you know, making changes like you were saying, Ian, you know, making changes, finding that different path to get you to your goals, even if you're not really having the races to get in for the year. Hopefully we'll have fall races back though. So I'm striving for that too. But well, because Jamil, you do the Javelina 100. Is that right? That's one of your races?
Yep, that's one of ours.
Yeah. Do you guys still have is that still kind of tentative for October this year?
Oh yeah, we hope so. I mean, we don't know for certain quite yet, but man, we are crossing our fingers.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that are like putting that on their radar that have reached out and they're like, okay, this is what we're looking for. So you may be overwhelmed with that. You might have to do 2 of them.
Yeah, I think it might have just filled up.
Nice.
So yeah, maybe back-to-back weekends, who knows?
So, all right, you guys are rocking it. We'll see you again in about a half hour.
All right, thank you.
Actually, Jamil, that was a question I'd like to ask you. That as a race director, what are the things you're looking for, other than just what the authorities say you're allowed to do? What are you looking for to be able to mitigate as races start coming back on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think there's necessarily a one-size-fits-all answer for that. But yeah, for our organization, fortunately, our virtual races have done pretty well. So we're not trying to rush back. Like for us, it's not going to be, I mean, yeah, like at some point it is kind of a financial decision, but we're trying to have a holistic view of the health and well-being of everyone. But I think, you know, it's important to look at, just be in contact with all the local authorities at the city, state, town levels, as well as also the guidelines from the experts from a national level, like the CDC, and but yeah, you kind of have to manage it all. And it's kind of an evolving situation. Right now, we're trying to speak with the folks in Silverton, Colorado. We've got a couple races in July up there. And for Silverton, it's such a small town. They don't have a hospital in town. So it's, you know, it's an interesting kind of little case where we're going to bring in all these people from outside and what's that going to do to the town itself. So we're kind of seeing, you know, are they opening up to tourists and what is that looking like? And then from our end, we'll do as much as we can to, but yeah, races are going to look different probably for a while going forward. We may have wave starts, we may have less hanging out time and barbecues afterwards and beer gardens. But I know me, for one, as an athlete, like I have Hard Rock on the calendar. They haven't canceled yet. I would run a Hard Rock that had no pacers and no crew and limited aid in order for me to still run it. Like I would happily take that and still run it. Yeah, we'd love to hang out in the gym and do all the awards, but if that had to go away, where I was still able to link the route together, I would happily take it.
No, that makes sense. And I would guess then that most people should expect races to look a little bit different through this year, at least. As you said, things like wave starts. No paces seems like a very simple thing because that can halve the number of people out there.
Sure.
Yeah,
little things like that. And I think what you were talking about, kind of maybe it's not talked about much, but that mental aspect I think is important right now. You know, it's, yeah, you may run a few less miles right now because it's more difficult, but focus on that mental, because I mean, all of us are feeling it. I think when so many of us we get so much enjoyment out of races and maybe traveling, and it's just that it's a mental health thing where we get a lot out of it. And with, I know like they just canceled Comrades and, you know, Leadville, and it's like,
yeah, my two big races of the year.
yeah,
but
exactly. And I lost Barkley, and I'm probably going to lose Hard Rock, and it's man, it's tough to think about that. And it's like, it leaves you feeling a bit empty and a bit lost, I think. And so trying to find something to replace that is important, like you were saying.
Well, one of the things I've tried to get people to think about is, what is it you like about the races you've chosen, or the best races you've ever gone to in the past? Is it the travel and seeing a new location and the beauty of that? Is it the social side of it? Is it challenging yourself to run as hard as you can? What are the things that really matter to you? And then what can you still keep within your training at the moment and with targets for this year? So virtual races are a great way to still have some degree of community there, particularly things like Quarantine Backyard Ultra, where you had 2,000 odd people on Zoom, so you could actually kind of see the people. But even if you're doing it solo and it's on a different day to other people, and it's all within a window of say 1 month, you know there's still other people out there doing that. That's also something I've been doing with my coaching company. So we have this week a challenge on Strava where all the members of the Strava Sharman Ultra group were adding up the miles to try and run around the world. So 24,000 miles in 1 week, knowing that every extra little bit you do adds to the community total. And so it's things like that where it can keep elements of what you love about running and racing, and work out how you can keep that in there still for the next few months. And also it's a really good time to just reassess what it is that you personally like about running. What is it that draws you to it? Why do you keep coming back to it? Because I think it's easy sometimes by just default to say, I always go to the Boston Marathon, or I always do a 100-miler in summer. And this is a chance to ask yourself, what is it you like about that? Does it have to be that exact race or that style of race? Maybe something different would be better. Maybe you want to do a different one of a different distance. Maybe like I've spent a bit of time doing short distance speed work because it's something I don't normally do as much of. And it's just kind of fun to mix it up, have a new challenge, but also hopefully have a better relationship with running, because it makes you think about it a little bit more. When races are on, it's easier to do things just by default of that's what I always do, and stick in a rut to some degree if you're not thinking about it much.
Yeah. Circling back to Zach and the treadmills, do you have a treadmill as well? A similar?
Yeah, so I have the same one he has there, the Nordic Track X. I think mine's the 21i. So it's
okay.
It's basically the same, but I think the only difference is the screen, basically.
Yeah, and do you have the incline as well? Do you use the incline? I know you're a big fan of, I know I see you hiking with weight vests and stuff. Do you do that on the treadmill as well?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing for me, I actually use the treadmill more for hiking than anything else, because where I live, the mountains are very snowy until about July. So if I want to get a 5,000-foot climb or something really steep, I don't have those options nearly as much until usually after I've done my first big 100-mile. Usually I'd have Western States in June. So I can't really train on the terrain that's ideal for that until after June. So that's where the treadmill comes in. And I can just knock out even a couple of miles, put it to 20%, and there's a 2,000-foot climb that I can add on to the end of a run. It's power hiking. Everything 15% up basically is power hiking for me, unless I'm doing a sprint speed session or something. But that's the main way that I use it. So it's usually just 1 or 2 miles at a time. I don't tend to go up to 40% because I almost fall off the treadmill. I mean, weirdly enough, it seems normal on a mountain, but to me on the treadmill, it just seems so steep. So I don't go much above about 30, but it really helps to have a treadmill that goes above 15%, because that's the normal in most of them. So I really like to be able to ramp it up above that, because races go above 15%. So I want to be able to practice that and to be able to get long sustained climbs as well, which is just impossible if you don't have either a treadmill or big hills that are available to you on your doorstep.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I found myself using it as well, and it's a great supplement for normal training. If you had some advice for Zach right now, I know he probably doesn't need any advice, but what would you give him or someone doing something long on a treadmill like this?
Yeah, I would say Zach is the master of this kind of thing, because he's done so many well-paced, even hundreds. But the difference here is because he's on a treadmill versus outside, there's a little bit more repetition in the movement pattern. So I think the fact he's switching between treadmills is really good, and ideally switching the pace as we discussed, just even a little bit, so that it's not exactly the same movement with the feet, because there's going to be more chance of overuse injuries or more chance of at least fatigue from using the muscles in exactly the same way compared to even running on a track outside where there's some variance. So that's the one thing to be careful about when you're going to be on treadmill for this long. You've got to be aware that there's maybe a slightly higher chance of that repetition tiring you out or having other issues. Obviously not an issue for most running, but if you're going to be on there for 12 hours, you've got to think about what makes 1% difference here, what's a little bit of a challenge, or everything else. But I think the other one is probably just the heat side of it, just being very aware of any changes. And even if the temperature in the room's the same, changes in how he's feeling, because his body temperature could still go up. And one thing to bear in mind is that they've done studies on what the optimum temperature is for running fast. And for marathoners, they found it was in the low 40 degrees. And even sub-elite ones, the high 40 degrees. So slower runners aren't going to generate quite as much heat. So bearing in mind, it's probably not under 50 degrees in there. So he's already got temperatures that are above optimal for running well.
Well, that's actually super interesting. I wonder, that would be really cool to see, I guess, a study on that, or like just make it like an ice box basically.
Yeah, but think about it. When you're running, you generate quite a lot of heat. So most spring or fall marathons, especially all the fast ones, Berlin, London, that kind of thing, they are typically not that hot. And that allows for the fastest possible times. The sub 2 hour Kipchoge record, again, he was picking somewhere that would have exactly the right temperature and it wouldn't be creeping up into the 60s or anything like that. So it's something that people don't realize when they think, oh, it's a warm day in my marathon, it's 75. They don't realize that's going to really slow them down relative to optimum conditions.
Sure. And like, I know he's used to probably running in 100 degrees right now, but even having it at, I don't know if he's got it 65 in the house right now, but that would still be maybe 20 degrees above what is like
above optimal. I mean, it should be relatively
optimal.
Comfortable for him, but sure, it's just adding that extra little bit of difficulty for him.
And it sounds like I did get we got a progress update here coming in. Looks like he is at 33 miles in 3:56. So just under that 4 hour mark, still right in the middle of that pace. Last mile, 6:57. He's been pretty consistent around that sub 7-minute mile pace here. His heart rate, 149 beats per minute. You can see some of the data here. This is a really helpful screen to see and track his progress as he goes.
And one thing to mention about his world record for 100 miles, that was an indoor and I believe air-conditioned, fairly cold environment. From what I could tell just by the fact that people were wearing jackets hanging around in there, it probably was more like in the 40s. So what he's dealing with here and slowing that pace a little bit down from probably about 10 seconds a mile slower than he was running for the world record is just making it that little bit easier given he does have the higher temperature. Awesome.
Well, Ian, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything else to add before we move along here?
No, just good luck to Zach. It's cool to watch. And it's crazy to think that I got out of bed and I feel very lazy that he's already 33 miles into his run.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks so much and have a great day, Ian.
Cheers, you too.